There are wounds that leave no scars on the skin, yet they redesign the entire architecture of your soul. You look back and see no great dramas. There was no physical violence, no extreme deprivation, nothing the world has agreed to call trauma. And that is exactly where the danger lies. Many of us were raised in homes where everything seemed to be in place, except the essential, emotional mirroring. You were the child who caused no trouble, the student who got good grades, the child who learned very early on that your needs were a burden and that silence was your best survival strategy. But what happens to a child who grows up being ignored? They do not stop loving their parents. They stop loving themselves. They become an adult who enters rooms apologizing for existing, who fears intimacy because emptiness is the only ground they know, and who confuses exhaustion with self-worth. Emotional neglect in childhood is the trauma of what did not happen. It is the absence of a look, the silence after an achievement, the hug that never came when you most needed to cry. In this video, we will not just talk about sadness. We will dive into the neurobiology of your silence and the psychology of those who learn to be invisible in order to be accepted. If you have always felt that something is missing, but never knew how to name it, prepare yourself. What you are about to discover next is not only about your past, it is the key to the future you have not yet given yourself permission to live. The biology of silence. The brain as a bunker. To understand the adult you are today, we need to look at what happened under the hood. Emotional neglect does not only alter your mood, it redraws the physical structure of your brain. When a child lives in an environment where their needs go unanswered, their biological system does not shut down. It enters a permanent survival mode. At the center of this process is the so-called HPA axis, the stress thermostat of your body. Without the comfort of a caregiver to help regulate emotions, your system is flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone. Imagine this as a kind of chemical acid that, over time, erodes critical areas, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for judgment and decision-making, and the hippocampus, the center of memory and learning. But modern science has gone even further. Neuroimaging studies from 2025 revealed that neglect alters the brain's very communication infrastructure, the white matter. It is as if the highways meant to connect your reason to your emotions were poorly built or blocked. This is why, so often, you logically know that you are safe, yet your body insists on reacting as if it were under imminent attack. And here is the revelation that can change the way you see yourself. Your brain is not broken. It is adapted. The full wiring of the human brain is only completed around the age of 32. If you feel mental rigidity or difficulty breaking patterns, understand that this was your nervous system learning to be efficient in an environment of emotional scarcity. You learned to shrink yourself and conserve energy because your brain understood that no one was coming to help you. But what is the cost of carrying this survival efficiency into your relationships and your career? In the next chapter, we will discover how this biology creates what Carl Jung called the mask of strength, and why the world praises you precisely for what is destroying you from the inside. The mask of strength and the cost of hyper-independence. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, loved, and recognized. But for those who grew up under the weight of emotional neglect, this mask is not merely a social accessory, it is survival armor. Because no one was available to hold you, you learned to hold yourself. This creates what modern psychology calls hyper-independence. The world looks at you and sees someone strong, responsible, and mature. But inside, that strength is a silent cry for help. You refuse assistance, push people away, and feel that trusting someone is a mortal danger. Your independence is not a choice. It is a conditioned reflex of someone who learned, in the harshest way, that they could rely on no one. Jung wrote that the persona is a mask of collective convenience. The problem arises when you wear that mask so convincingly that you end up forgetting who you truly are beneath it. You became the good child, the friend who listens to everyone but is never heard. the professional who never fails. But as Jung warned, everything we repress and hide in the dark eventually transforms into our shadow. That child who had to grow up too fast did not disappear. They were buried alive. And while you maintain the facade of a functional adult, that child continues to pull the strings of your life through anxiety, an inability to rest, and a constant sense of guilt when you say no. You confuse exhaustion with success because productivity is the only way you know how to feel worthy of existing. Stop for a moment. Look at your life today. Are you truly independent, or are you simply terrified of being a burden to others? This mask protected you in the past, but now it is suffocating you. It is preventing you from living real connections. But how do these invisible patterns show up in your daily life, in your relationships, and in the way you treat yourself when no one is watching? Next, we will dissect the 4 practical symptoms of emotional neglect in adult life. And one of them is something you probably consider one of your greatest virtues. The 4 practical symptoms and the virtue that is a trauma. Now, let's bring this into reality. How does emotional neglect translate into your everyday life? There are 4 patterns that define the adult who was ignored, and I guarantee you, the last one is the one you probably consider your greatest source of pride. 1. Selective numbing, alexithymia. Many times you feel empty, but don't know why. You may experience a sudden moment of joy, and then, almost immediately, your body shuts it down because happiness feels unfamiliar or even dangerous. Because your emotions were not validated in childhood, you learn to ignore them until they became background noise that you can no longer translate into words. 2. Productivity as the only source of value. You feel that you only have the right to rest after you have been useful. For the emotionally neglected child, love was turned into a transaction. You are loved for what you do, not for who you are. If you are not producing, achieving, or fixing something, you feel a corrosive guilt, as if you were failing at an invisible mission. 3. The fixer complex, people-pleasing. You became the therapist friend, the one who takes care of everyone, but never asks for anything in return. In relationships, you take on the role of managing other people's emotions, anticipating conflicts before they even happen. You move through rooms, walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace to guarantee your own emotional safety. 4. The virtue that is a trauma. Hyper-independence. This is the most dangerous symptom because the world praises you for it. You're so strong. You handle everything on your own. But the truth is, you refuse help because deep down, you believe that no one will show up if you fall. You push people away when they get too close to your vulnerability because trust feels like a trap. Being unshakable was not a personality choice. It was the only way you found not to be destroyed by abandonment. These behaviors are not who you are. They are survival strategies that once saved you, but now they are suffocating you. You are exhausted from being strong for an audience that never asked if you were okay. But if these patterns were learned, they can also be unlearned. The question is, how do you begin to heal a wound that you spent your entire life telling yourself wasn't that bad? In the next block, we will enter the territory of shadow work and discover the brutal but liberating process of rescuing the child you buried in order to survive. Shadow work and the return home. We have reached the breaking point. You spent your entire life running from pain, believing that if you were strong enough, the emptiness would disappear. But here is the brutal truth. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried. You are the person they were waiting for. The first step toward healing is not fixing what is wrong. It is witnessing. Until you validate what happened, you will continue gaslighting yourself, repeating phrases like, "It wasn't that bad," or "Other people had it worse." But the absence of something essential is, in itself, a trauma. The beginning of what is called shadow work is not about positive thinking. It is about turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself and saying, "I see you now, I hear you, and I am not leaving." This process is brutal because it requires you to feel the grief you never had time to feel. You will have to sit with the anger, the sadness, and the unmet needs. You will have to cry for the innocence you lost while trying to protect adults who should have protected you. But that grief is not weakness. It is proof that you are healing. What was frozen inside you is finally beginning to thaw. Begin today by asking your inner child, what did I need back then that I never received? You may hear answers like, I needed to know it wasn't my fault, or I just wanted to play and rest without fear. And slowly, you begin to give those things to yourself now, not to change the past, but to stop reliving it in the present. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be in order to survive. Your maturity was never the problem. The problem was the lack of choice. But now, you have a choice. You can choose gentleness. You can choose rest. If this message touched something deep within you, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let that phrase be your first vote of affirmation for your new identity. You never had the childhood you deserved, but you still have a future. And this time, you are the one who writes the story. If you feel that this journey of reclaiming your emotional sovereignty is what you need right now, subscribe to this channel. Leave a like if this video helped you see your own invisible strength, and share it with that person you know is exhausting themselves right now trying to please a world that still does not see them.